Total U.S. debt reaches $55.9 trillion amid significant increases in corporate and government borrowing. Total domestic non-financial debt jumped by 11.7% to $55.9 trillion, the Fed said in its quarterly statement on domestic financial accounts. The debt had increased by 3.2% in Q4 of 2019. The biggest debt gain comes on the business side, rising 18.8%, while federal government debt also jumped 14.3%. Total federal debt recently passed $26 trillion. We have raised 96% of that debt, $24.5 trillion debt, since 1981, or less than 39 years ago. It took the U.S. over 2 centuries to accumulate its first $1 trillion in federal debt, a number which was surpassed for the first time in the fourth quarter of 1981. What is stunning, however, is the recent pace of increase. Total debt was only $23.5 trillion on March 23, the day the Fed unleashed unlimited QE, meaning that in 2.5 months, the U.S. has added $2.5 trillion in debt. And the punchline, the U.S. added the last $1 trillion in the shortest time on record, achieving this remarkable feat in just 1 month, since May 4, when the total debt was just under $25 trillion. We added an extra trillion in just last month. That means the debt will double by 2022. Imagine if the average middle-class American planned on doubling his debt by 2022. What could be bought with money? Totally another mortgage balance, student loan balance, car loan balance, and credit card balance. We're talking $500,000 or more plus salary to spend in just 2 years. The COVID effects are starting to snowball down a hill. Wait until the forbearance period runs out and housing gets sucked in. The roller coaster is just getting started. Fiat bugs and mutants who say debt doesn't matter are going to find out the hard way that debt does indeed matter. The new slogan, sovereign debt, matters. We are $26 trillion in debt. The government has agreed on a stimulus of $5.5 trillion and another $3 trillion next, $8.5 trillion so far. This basically means that our national debt is going to be in $30 trillion range. Household debt rose 3.9% due in large part to an increase on the mortgage side of 3.2%. Consumer debt rose 1.6%. Only private citizens with student loans get no bankruptcy protection. I give it a couple of months when the credit cards of the people who are already maxed out stop working, and there's no new income to pay off the minimum. Meanwhile, food will be more expensive, and EBT benefits will not rise in tandem. From 2016 to 2020 we have tripled our budget deficit and increased our national debt by 20%. Future generations are going to have to pay for this. It's very clear that every president keeps adding a few $1 trillion, and more specifically, Trump and coronavirus are adding a lot of trillions of dollars to our national debt. This debt is like an ever heavier weight spread across a population that isn't growing, and eventually, the policies of avoidance will crush whatever is under it. There is no way we will pay off the national debt. We will simply pay the interest until we can no longer even afford that, then it's a complete collapse. The big cities will go first and hard. Supply chain disruptions will be massive, and the cost of living is off the charts, so people will get behind the 8 balls almost immediately when the people who are living above their means suddenly lose their income. Then come the street gangs. There is a reason Trump is activating National Guard on the east and west coasts, and it's not because they are fighting the virus. The collapse is inevitable. No politician has the guts or brains to save the current system. The time to protect whatever wealth you have is now, as stagflation and eventually, hyperinflation will wipe out whatever value is left of the US dollar. It will never get fixed until the system collapses. Talking tax increases and benefit cuts does not win you votes. Trump wants to be re-elected. If that means financial collapse and the middle class destroyed, so be it. MAGA. He said he was the king of debt, and he ain't lying. Winning. Which is why there is exactly no alternative to saving in gold. Investment is dead anyway. Return on investment has been reduced to zero under a flood of printed paper credit. Bank accounts are certificates of confiscation. There's zero yields anywhere unless you are prepared to accept the enormous risk. In real terms, organic economic growth has been gone for years, never mind what the useless GDP data releases blurb out. Just put the debt into the stock market like the rest of us. No risk and unlimited money. We're all gamblers now, bettors, because that's all that is left. The Weimar Republic will look like paradise compared to what's coming. Extraordinary to me how the average Joe really has no clue about the epic seriousness of all this. Printing still requires supplies and labor, computer digits don't. And that, my friends, is significant. Fun fact, by mid-1923, Germany's central banks were using more than 30 paper factories, almost 1,800 printing presses, and 133 companies to print banknotes. And don't forget about the $250 trillion in unfunded liabilities, boys and girls. That is debt, no matter how you slice and dice it. America is $250 trillion in the hole, but everything's going to be all right, folks, not a problem. That includes the unfunded promises for Medicare and Social Security. It's unfunded even though our employers and we sent the money in because corrupt Congress stole it. So they will have to borrow to make the payouts, which seems like we paid twice. Now we see why smaller government is better government. They stole more than our Social Security payments. They undermined our life's work into nothing and made us pay for the weapons they will use to shut us up. The U.S. economy to debt ration is equal to that of Greece's 10 years ago, and that is using a U.S. pre-corona economy. The next 6 months will be interesting. The rate of U.S. debt growth has gone parabolic. There is no turning back from this insanity. The only out is through a smoking pit of disaster, crawling out the other side to start over. The federal government has a huge balance sheet. Oil and gas leases totaling more than $150 trillion for starters. It must be nice to leave your fiscal mess to someone else. Politicians only know how to spend. The nation is bankrupt. Sooner or later, we will have to declare bankruptcy or borrow from an unknown source to pay the debts. Then whoever we borrow from will pretty much own the U.S. If the government continues to print money, then money, in general, will start to be worthless. All the people who worked hard and saved and lived within their means will see that money's value decrease because of oversaturation. I cannot honestly believe some people don't understand that if you receive money for doing nothing, then it needs to be repaid. It was not enough to hold the markets up. They needed unlimited QE, i.e., another $2 trillion injection now. What they got is a slow drip, while Jerome sounded like he was the Candyman to equities. He did say markets should price in risk, meaning no PPT saves and let the markets fall until they find a now limited QE medium. Robinhood traders will get slaughtered, and the Fed looks good. That was just to bail out the 1% who owns stocks and bonds. It is going to cost a bit more to keep the other 99% from burning the country to the ground. Until the GOP manifesto for tycoon tax freedom is firmly dealt with and fair share responsible taxation is restored and a wealth tax on the 1% oligarchy who have accumulated 50% eliminate greed breed entitlements. We can start by closing the tax loopholes for huge corporations and remove the rollback of the taxes they paid. 35% may have been a bit much. However, 30% would still afford the big corporations to make profits and produce billionaire CEOs. 21% is obscene. Must close the loopholes. Everyone should expect taxes to increase, both federal, state, county, city, and of course, when there is a budget deficit, the first thing to go are social programs and education. This is how wealth transfers happen in the US. The Fed bails out airlines, hedge fund companies, banks, etc., i.e., their buddies mega corporations without needing to pay it back. The Fed makes money off the interest for hitting some keys on a computer creating fake currency, and the hard-working Americans via taxes pay it back. So we pay for extremely wealthy people to get even more wealthy. Meanwhile, small businesses only hope they can qualify for a loan, most won't get one, and they have to pay it back with interest. The Fed exists to support greed and irresponsibility, simple as that. The US, Japan and Eurozones all need to man up and accept the mistakes they've made. Put greed aside and let markets, economies clean themselves out. Stop this money printing bailout mentality and return to free market roots. Otherwise, this thing will just keep going on, and reward for effort will be a thing of the past. Stop rewarding stupid and corrupt behavior. Stop corporate welfare, end Wall Street and the stock market. That way companies have nothing to do with their money except investing in their workers and their companies, not their stock prices. Start collecting taxes from them. American business mentality is to borrow egregiously and make very risky bets. Then when everything goes wrong, deflect the negatives of the risk by having the Fed bail you out or game the system. How much longer can moral hazard be ignored, rewarding these inefficient and dangerous business practices instead of punishing the ever wealthier executors? Americans like living on debt, but the party is over. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The market bubble doesn't turn my stomach as much as the debt bubble. Unless you've bought recently on margin, a correction might sting, but it won't bankrupt you. Debt, however, needs its payments made. And if you've got one low payment too many, it gets ugly fast. Add a few trillion here to the debt and add a few trillion there to the debt, and pretty soon, still, nobody gives a damn, because everybody knows that in order to keep the shithouse's walls from imploding, there will have to be another few trillion added here and another few trillions added there. That is called Ouroboros economics. Until now, it has been a discussion about billions. Now we shall hear a discussion about trillions. 3 zeros difference. Zero is nothing until you keep adding them to the end of a number. And with the dollar devaluation coming, it will be quadrillions. Forget trillions. This is the Buzz Lightyear economics, to infinity and beyond. Well, at least we are in good hands. Our current president is the best president in American history in handling bankruptcies. He has a lot of experience, and that's what we need right now, one with experience. And now I understand what he was saying when he said, "I am the chosen one." Who else would be able to handle this pending greatest bankruptcy in the history of mankind? After all, he's gone through 6 bankruptcies already. And America will become his 7th. The USA is a republic run by big corporations. Therefore, it is actually an oligarchy. Elections will not stop this, as it gets worse every time. The top 0.1% of the super rich have decided who wins through gerrymandering and by keeping this antiquated electoral college system, both favoring the top 1% of the population. Compared to the EU countries, the USA hardworking citizens do not have any universal health care system, no 6 weeks, year paid vacation, no 38 hours of work, no nothing European citizens have. Why is that? Well, the taxation system is much fairer, military expenses are far lower, so EU can afford to make laws favoring the interest of their voters. In the EU, the politicians are afraid of the voters. In the USA, they are afraid of big corporate America. There is no money in the banks. Your bank accounts reflect a measured value of somebody else's unbridled power. We are allotted credits by the secret elite that allow us to live falsely believing they have not enslaved us. Capitalism is simply what communism sees in the mirror. Nothing is going to happen to fix our deficit because both parties and people are addicted to debt and never-ending GDP growth. There is no way out this other than inflation. It is not possible politically to cut benefits and raise taxes sufficiently to make any meaningful headway on the national debt. It is just too big, and the political and social forces against deep cuts and big tax increases are too entrenched. Fix the problem by cutting politicians' entitlements, politicians' luxury spending, and stop giving tax breaks to wealthy, who need to pay taxes on all income. Stop stimulus pay to big companies and to those who make over $90,000 a year and to non-citizens with green cards. Cut multiple living expenses to presidents with multiple security to adult family members. Now, that is a good bog start to boost our economy. Cut federal salaries by 50%. Cut federal benefits by 80%. Cut federal holidays by at least 5 days. Cut federal pensions by at least 50%. Cut Congress pensions by 100%. They do not deserve a pension for 2 years of doing nothing. Cut Congress medical to the same the retired people get. Watch the budget balance in a hurry. The Fed counterfeits dollars by the trillions, destroying their purchasing power and driving up prices. Funds endless wars and welfare. Creates massive and artificial economic booms that must be followed by painful busts. Bails out the politically connected, creating an economy riddled with zombie corporations. Central planning is, as always, a disaster. The Fed will bail till it can't bail anymore, complete economic warfare followed by the destruction of society. Post-coronavirus, the situation will be 2 times or 5 times or 10 times worse. Global depression is imminent and will continue for an indefinite period as depopulation, deleveraging, and decline are the natural state of things. Cast off the lifeboats. The Titanic is going down, and we'll be in small boats on very rough seas from here on. This was going to happen. Eventually, coronavirus has just accelerated the timeline. 3 Ds. Depression. Depopulation. De-dollarization. It's the New World Order. Serfdom. Destroy middle class, small business, pensions, public and private 401 kilo-second. Doctors can't even perform surgeries right now unless they are emergency surgeries. Virtually every business is suffering. When the formerly comfortable middle class loses everything, the government will come in to save us, with public benefits and police state. No honor among thieves. The greed pandemic is upon us. The real looters are living in Wall Street, and they're looting our money by the trillions. I personally hold the globalists and their Federal Reserve accountable for this global depression scenario. They are responsible for inflating the currency and all bubbles, enabling criminal behavior, and destroying the economy in the process.